So we were on the topic of clothing and laundry on Shabbat. It's quite a detailed topic. We're not going to go on for more than one more session, but a number of things that we need to cover when it comes to clothing on Shabbat. One item that we hadn't yet discussed was this idea of folding clothes on Shabbat. So because laundry is asur midoraita on Shabbat, because we said this concept of cleaning out the wool that they had to use, they had to dye in order to make the curtains and the parochot, the kaparot, and the clothes of the kohanim for the Mishkan. So wetting an article of clothing, but really more precisely squeezing the water out of it, that's the real crux, as we say. That's the real foundation of this concept of milabin. So something that gets a little bit less publicity is the isur of folding clothing on Shabbat. So what exactly does it mean folding clothing on Shabbat? As today, in antiquity, nobody was transporting clothing on dummies, right? On mannequins in order to get it from place to the other. Clothes were folded. And the way that you fold an article of clothing becomes a part of the style. In other words, you ever seen somebody wear a brand new dress shirt, right? There are always these two folds right over here because the way they fold it, the way they present it. So if someone's wearing a shirt that's got a pleat in one direction and then it goes the other way because that's where it was folded, you know his shirt is new. Do I care? Maybe I don't care. I've never heard of anybody ironing that out before he puts it on the first time. Like, you wear a new shirt. You wear a new shirt, it is. Everybody, shfurianas. Look at me, everybody, I can afford a new shirt. So, folding an article of clothing the same way that it was folded the first time you purchased it, we have a tendency towards isur. I say tendency towards isur. Why? Because maybe this is the conclusion of the laundry act. Maybe, you do your laundry, and you ever done your laundry and like you fall asleep or you leave the clothes out, they're wet, they get wrinkled, you'll never get the wrinkles out, not even with an iron, you have to go back and do the laundry again, basically. You dry the clothes and then you do the ironing. So maybe folding it is a little bit like the conclusion of the process, and we'll talk about that again in a second because there's another example of this.
But it's midirabanan.
What's that?
It's asur midirabanan.
The folding?
Yeah.
Probably not midoraita. It's much easier to say midirabanan, if anything. I would agree to that, except that the Sephardim are more lenient on this than the Ashkenazim are. Right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
According to the Shulchan Aruch, if the article of clothing is no longer new, then the folding that you're doing isn't like the initial folding and creasing.
It can never be like the first.
It'll never be that way, right? So the question is like this: the Ashkenazim, and in some cases some Sephardim, want you to fold the clothing in a different way. So, for example, the classic example is a talit on Shabbat. If I have a talit on Shabbat and I fold it exactly the way that it was folded originally, according to the Shulchan Aruch, it's really only the first time, maybe the first 2 or 3 times when it still looks a little bit new. Once it's no longer new, we're not really going to consider this folding anything complicated or problematic. The Ashkenazim might not agree to that. They'll tell you, no, really what you're doing, it's not that different, for example, from ironing, which we would say is maybe a tolada. It's like one of the ancillary, supportive activities of the great melacha of milabin. But the Shulchan Aruch doesn't hold this way on an article of clothing that's no longer new. The question then is, what's considered new? If new is the first time I wore it, or it's maybe the first time, as long as I'm using it without having washed it, maybe I'll wear my talit for a few weeks or even a few months until it gets dirty enough I have to wash it. And then once I wash it, anyway, the folds, you can always see them, but they get a little bit less pronounced. According to Shulchan Aruch, even if you take the talit, the way it was folded the first time, and you just fold it in a slightly different way, that's it, the story's over, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't make a difference, no one cares. The Ashkenazim continue to be careful about this. Even after they've already laundered it, they still want you to fold it in a different way, so it shouldn't look like you're folding it the same way that you folded it when you first got it. That's not so much of an issue. There's another issue, by the way. This is something we consider to be something like basically a makeh b'fatish. Remember this expression, makeh b'fatish?
The last.
Right, so literally it means you're hitting something with a hammer.
Yeah,
right? So what's the origin of the expression?
Oh, it's the last hit.
The last hit of hammer.
To finish something like a sword or whatever.
Right. It sounds this way. Really, the original example has nothing to do with anything you hit with a hammer except once. You're familiar with this? They used to make ovens, right? They would make ovens out of clay. Okay. And if you make a good thick clay or a good thick ceramic wall, what you have to do in order to dry it out and to harden it is you fire it. That's the expression in English, to fire it. right? Nowadays we use the expression like to let someone go, to terminate someone's employment. But to fire an oven literally means to heat it up. So you would fire an oven or a kiln, and then the first time you use it, you would tap it with a hammer to shake off loose pieces of clay or loose pieces of ceramic or porcelain or whatever it is that you're using. And the last tap that you give it is the one that makes it basically an official, ready-to-go utensil. Like you put a few layers on, and whatever shakes off when you tap it with a mallet or you tap it with a hammer, basically means that it's done. I don't know that they hit it with a hammer beforehand. It seems like they didn't. It was just that one last tap. So if you're going to sell it, you would sell it without the little bits and pieces inside. You clean it up, you give it a tap, that's it. Whatever came off with a hammer came off, and whatever doesn't isn't going to come off over the life of the oven. So makeh befatish we tend to hold as a sor midoraita because it's the conclusion of the production process. It doesn't need to be a hammer. It doesn't even need to be an oven. Anything that you do that's considered the official conclusion or the last official step in this malacha process automatically becomes considered makeh befatish. Where does this come up in clothing? Very interesting. The Gemara explains that this might be the problem with they used to when they had clothing back in the day, when they like say a new shirt. You're buying a new shirt or a new tunic. So you fold it up. Today they put in pins, okay? Before they had pins, sometimes just to make sure that the inside doesn't get dirty and that the thing stays folded the right way, they would put a stitch, let's say, in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
So this way no one else wore it. It's like the safety cover on a bottle of Snapple, right? As long as the vacuum is intact, nobody opened it, nobody put anything in, nobody took anything out. So they would put a stitch across the neck, basically just to hold the thing closed, and that it would stay folded this way. So before I put it on, I have to cut the string. So cutting this string would be considered the makeh befatish. Sometimes it happens that you get an article of clothing, it's closed in one way or another. For sure, everyone will tell you the best thing to do is to take all these things off before Shabbat. Because you don't want to be guilty. In other words, I didn't make the shirt. All I did was I took out the stitch, or I took out the pins that prevent it from being used. But that's kind of the end of the process. So it's a little bit less permanent to take out pins than it is to take out a stitch that was in there that needs to be cut.
And if that's the only thing that you did?
If it's the only thing you did, yeah.
So is it still asur if it's the only thing that you did?
So ironically, because this is a halacha that's a little bit nebulous in terms of how it's applied, there are actually situations in which we use this liqula, right? How do we use this liqula? I'll give you a funny example of this. If I want to buy a waffle iron, okay? It's a waffle iron. It's basically two, electric. Today they're mostly electric. They used to do this with coal, but today it's electric. It has a heating element on two sides. I pour in the batter. I close the thing. As the dough rises, it sticks and fits into a form. I open it up. I take it out. Technically, this thing is made of metal, right? At least the surfaces that contact the food. And technically, any metal utensil that's made or produced by a non-Jew, let's say in China, would need to be immersed in a mikveh before I can use it.
Mm-hmm.
And here you have an interesting machloket. What's the machloket?
It's electric, you can put it.
If it's electric, do you take it to the mikveh or do you not take it to the mikveh?
No, I had this question to you once.
Yeah, everyone had this question to me at least once. So if you take this thing to the mikveh, what's going to happen to it?
No.
Chances are it's going to get ruined. If it doesn't get ruined, you have to let it sit for 2 weeks and dry up, and then you hope the first time you plug it in, you don't blow it up. So taking it to the mikveh might very well destroy it. At the same time, where do we learn there's such a thing as an exemption from an implement or from some kind of an instrument or some kind of utensil from being taken to the mikveh if it's made of metal? There's no such thing in the Gemara as something made of metal that you don't take to the mikveh. So there are two examples of things that we maybe instituted, we exempted in modernity that they didn't have in antiquity. Number one is disposables. Right? You ever have food that was served at caterers in an aluminum pan? So who took that pan to the mikveh?
Charadim do. Sometimes when I go to the mikveh and drop something, I see a few Charadim.
So, right.
Aluminium?
Yeah, aluminum. It's metal, no?
If you use it more than once, though.
So, do caterers use it more than once?
No, they throw it away.
Chances are they throw it away. Maybe there's something left. They still keep it in there, but
So
that's still the first use.
They still do mikveh on those?
So, the standard answer is no. I'm sorry, Emanuele, you're Italian. Let me hit you where it hurts.
Yes, too.
A bottle of wine. The bottle is made of what?
Glass.
Glass. And glass, we take it to the mikveh or don't take it to the mikveh?
We do.
We do.
You do? Okay.
You
We
do
take
if you
it
wanna-
to the mikveh because the glass has metal in it,
Okay.
right? It's sand and metal. That's how you make glass. Well, I've never been to where is it? Venice.
Murano,
Yeah, of course,
Murano.
yes.
Okay, the famous
Murano.
glass blowing where
Murano,
they sell
yes.
like a little duck for $80,000. Yeah. So they, I know someone who bought one. So the glass, it has metal in it.
Okay.
We take glass to the mikveh, maybe midrabanan, but we do it with a bracha.
Yeah.
Okay? How do you buy a bottle of wine without the bottle itself having gone to the mikveh? If it's owned by a non-Jew, it's not a problem. But now I bought it, and there's wine inside it. So what do? I open it up, I pour the wine out, I take the bottle to the mikveh, I dry it out, I put the wine back in. Good luck. Okay? So we're relying on an idea proposed by the poskim, which is that any kli, any utensil that's only meant for one use is what's called a kli garua. Kli garua literally means a bad utensil. It's not really a glass utensil, which is really funny in the case of wine or champagne because it's pretty stiff. Those bottles, you can use them forever. I mean, glass is glass. So from this, you end up with things like, let's say, aluminum pans that they use for caterers, aluminum foil. Sometimes you can cook potatoes in it, for example. So, although the Torah requires us, this is midoraita, right? So, any utensil that's used in terms of kashrut, it needs to be kashered. If you're taking utensils from the goyim, you have to first immerse them in boiling water or burn them. And it has to be purified in the water of nida, meaning the water that a nida uses to purify herself. So it goes to the same mikveh that a woman would use. So if this is the case, we made an exemption for instruments that are, or for utensils that are made of glass or metal, but they're not intended for more than one use, and so we exempt them. And so if I have a factory and I want to produce, let's say, a can of Coca-Cola, but I can't do it because I would have to take every single one of my cans to the mikveh. That would be cost prohibitive. So this is how we exempt it. Fine. Item number one. Item number two would be, and this is also relative chidush. Rav Chaim David HaLevi writes that I believe he was of Turkish, like Spanish-Turkish origin, but he was very accepted in Israel as a posek before and right after the founding of the state.
He died very young, right?
He died, I believe, at the age of 39 or 40,
Yeah, I read that.
something young. But he was very prolific. He published and
I think that there is, he wrote a sort of Kitzur Shulchan Aruch.
first Sephardic, yeah.
Right, that was the first translated in Italian ever. The first Kitzur
Of
Shulchan Aruch.
his,
Yeah, that was translated in Italian. Was around for many years, and then they translated one of Rav Shlomo Gansfield.
which was published much earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was translated much earlier, about Ashkenazi. So,
Why would they translate an Ashkenazi book into Italian?
because Italian are always confused about big and Ashkenazi.
So they hold by everyone's Chumrot and everyone's Kurot.
Exactly.
Whatever they
So-
feel like, right?
Right, whatever's shorter. So Rav Chaim David HaLevi writes very interestingly. He says, yes, it's true that in antiquity, every single utensil that we took to the mikveh, we would take it if it was made of metal or if it was made of glass, midrabanan, but with a bracha. But we exempt from this the kli garua, which is a relatively novel invention, or let's say perception. And also we exempt from this any kli that would be destroyed by the mikveh. Meaning, if taking the kli to the mikveh would ruin it, then it's exempted.
You know what's the issue with that is the pasta maker, the one by hands.
Yeah,
You cannot put water in it.
I know. I
It's-
did when I took mine to the mikveh and it started to rust.
Right. So my mother was very careful when we bought it. That I could not put it in the mikveh.
So taking it to really, but anything with iron in it would would have this problem. And Chazal used iron, cast iron, for example. You ever seen a cast iron pan?
What if you dry it very quickly? You put it in the hot sun.
It doesn't
So
matter
it-
because it's very intricate. It has a
Well, it has a lot of
inside.
empty spaces and cavities.
So
And
maybe
somehow
it
you
didn't
can
have
roll it,
much.
you can blow dry it, but you put a little bit of oil on it, it'll eventually go away. But they don't use cast iron pans in Europe anymore.
What's cast iron?
The really heavy metal pans for steaks,
Battuto credo che sia.
like for making steaks at home. They don't have this. The really really heavy pans.
Oh,
Like
I've seen that.
in Tom and Jerry when they used to hit each other with a
Yeah,
pan.
no,
It was like
yeah,
these
the same
big.
way.
It weighs like 8 kilos. These things are massive.
I've seen these, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
They don't use them in France.
I don't have any.
Everybody who takes steak seriously in America has one.
I saw one.
If you're gonna make
Yeah, I see
pan,
what you
because it
mean.
gets very hot.
I saw one at Home Goods or something.
Yeah, exactly. They're very heavy, and you can't mistake them for anything else. No Teflon, nothing. It has a layer of oxidation on it. You're supposed to put oil on it. You burn it, and then it makes it a little bit black, like the bottom of a pot, and then it's indestructible. You can use it forever, even though it's pure iron. So there's no indication. I mean, yeah, it would rust, but it wouldn't necessarily ruin the fabric of the kli per se. Here, if I take this electric waffle iron to the mikveh, if I short circuit it, it doesn't work anymore. It's no longer useful as a kli. Nobody uses these things cold. It's not like a pasta press. So the chidush was that if taking it to the mikveh ruins it, then maybe we shouldn't have to do this. Another point that he makes about this case, and I'm bringing all this up only because of the makeh b'fatish. Another point that he makes about this is that the kli only works when it's attached to the wall. Then you have to put in a plug, right? It's electric. So anything that's attached to a building is not considered a kli. This the Gemara says that it loses its status of a kli. So if I take, for example, a bathtub that really would have been considered a basin, it's considered a kli because it has a receptacle. It contains liquid. But once I cement it into my floor in the bathroom, it's no longer considered a kli per se. It's no longer considered like a separate individual kli. For what? Why do I care? For if somebody dies in the house, anything that was inside a kli that wasn't covered would become impure. Mm-hmm. So it's not once it's affixed to the building or attached to the wall or the floor, it's not considered a kli. The same thing would be said, for example, for the let's say the water tower on top of a building, where they keep the pressure. So the whole building gets its water from the top, not from the bottom. So you see these like wooden cylinders on top of the
everywhere
buildings.
in New York.
Yeah, everywhere in New York, except in Italy where the water comes by magic.
Exactly.
So,
You don't have the water tower either.
no, they just have really high pressure pipes.
Yeah,
Usually they try to put like water tanks on top of a hill or something. That's what they do in Europe.
Yeah, in the suburbs you see they have big tanks sitting in the middle of nowhere.
But the building are not so tall also, so it's easier. They don't have like
Skyscrapers.
Yeah.
We don't even have more than 10 floors maximum.
Yeah, maximum.
I agree. Same
Really?
thing in
No
same thing in
skyscrapers
Paris.
anywhere in Rome? The
I
whole
mean,
city?
of course, there are a few, but it's
But
not
it's
like.
very rare.
But they're American and nobody uses them. So basically, the thing is no longer considered a kli, meaning it's not meqabel tumah. If somebody in the building dies and it's on top of the building, it would become tameh. But it doesn't because it's affixed, it's attached to the building. So he has a chidush and he says, because this thing is only considered a kli when it's attached, because it's absolutely useless when it's not. Nobody stores things in it, you can't use it for anything else. So it's only considered a kli when it's attached to the wall, and therefore it's not really considered a kli. It loses the status of kli because it's mehubar, because it's attached. Why do I bring this up? Because the Haredi response is a little bit different, and they'll say, there's no such thing as a metal utensil not going to the mikveh, we don't care. And if you're going to go to Costco and you're going to buy these aluminum pans, you take them into the mikveh one by one, and Rav Mordechai Eliyahu says, if you're going to use them more than once, or there's even a probability that you're going to use some of them, make a bracha. If you don't, then don't make a bracha. But you take them anyway. So the Chadchila, take them, just don't make a bracha. So the Haredi response to this is easy. Makeh b'fatish. If the utensil was made in China, probably was made by a non-Jewish guy, right? Because there aren't 1.5 billion Jews in China. If I take an electric utensil and I, let's say, take out one of the screws, but something structural or something electric, like I take out a screw and now one of the electrical contacts is detached, it doesn't work. And if I put in the last screw, now I, the Jew, completed this kili. It was completed in the hands of a Jew. I can buy raw materials from a Chinese guy, an Italian guy, and a Spanish guy, put it together, and I made a kli. It doesn't have to go to the mikveh. But it's true even of the makeh b'fatish, meaning this concept of being the one who puts the last finishing touch on something actually makes it a kli. This actually appears also in Hilkhot Shabbat. If I buy a really fancy knife, let's say from one of these Japanese Ovdei Kochavim, and the knife itself, I didn't have the opportunity to take it to the mikveh before I got to the slaughterhouse. There's no mikveh for miles. So what can I do? If I sharpen the knife, if the knife came unsharpened and I sharpen it, or I ruin the blade and then I sharpen it again, a knife isn't a knife unless it cuts. And if now, thanks to me, the thing cuts and previously it didn't, then it's my work, my labor that made it a kili, and therefore it's exempt from tevilah in the first place. So, it's a cute trick. But makeh b'fatish, we take it seriously. It means the item isn't an item until you've done this last little...
I got it. So it's still a so midoraita even if you just do the last little bit.
But just a question of
Either way, meaning it's in the terms of an article of clothing, if it was stitched or tied up in a certain way, and you were the one who made it first suitable for wearing as an article of clothing, then you're guilty of the makeh b'fatish because it wasn't useful until then.
But just a matter of cutting, like, mean like taking scissors and cutting, or if
Well,
I don't cut
in the case
anything,
of
but
the-
I just take
In
something
the case
away.
in the case of the Gemara, it's talking about stitches and undoing stitches because the stitches are somewhat permanent. Now the question is, what happens if I have one of those plastic tags?
Yeah, plus that like a carton, like cardboard,
Right.
you know, like.
Yeah, but those
So-
plastic tags, even my dry cleaner puts them back.
Right. So, well, your dry cleaner puts them in after you've already worn
Yeah.
the clothing and he's already cleaned it. So, what if I had a plastic tag? I don't know if I can think of an actual example. Like, I've never seen a shirt or a pair of pants that was actually closed with one of these socks.
Oh yeah.
Socks. You never saw that?
Yeah.
You buy a pair of socks that has a thing of plastic
yes,
stuck
yeah,
through it.
Yeah, sure.
So it's an interesting question if this would actually qualify or not. Probably not.
Because you're destroying it.
Well,
If I don't
Yes,
cut,
but you're destroying the stitch that holds your clothing, your shirt closed. Anyway, the example from the Gemara, but you're destroying it is what makes the kli. It's like I can't wear it until I take this thing out. So before they had pins, they would use this. So the thing with socks is that the socks were already useful. They were already made this way. This isn't something I have to undo to make them socks. I just have to take this thing out because after they made them and they were perfectly useful, they went ahead and attached them so they don't get lost.
well, that's the same thing with the shirt. They made the shirt and then they put the
Well,
thing,
with the shirt, it's more like a security feature. It's like I know nobody ever wore this shirt, except for me. Or like I'm the one who bought it. It's new, and I'm going to cut it and I'm going to use the. So interesting
Okay.
question. That thing is made of plastic. I mean, how permanent is it? It'll stay there until you take it out. So
No, I just think my question was just a matter of cutting. But if I take it away without cutting anything, I don't know. I
Just
don't know. I just take something out. I don't cut. I don't stretch.
you're undoing permanent stitches, and that's the problem with that. You're taking something that was meant to be permanent, just like a knot, and you're undoing so. And a knot, you can cut next to it. You can cut it out. You don't have to deal with it. In this case, like let me put it to you this way: when you made a shirt in antiquity, you designed it, you stitched it, you made sure your measurements were accurate, and then you stitched it shut, and then it was ready for sale. And it wasn't ready for sale until you finished this. So maybe you would be guilty of not making it the way it was supposed to if you skipped that last step. Or maybe the clothing salesman, like the tailors, wouldn't buy it from you if it wasn't this way. And so really, it was still not a shirt until you actually cut this thing open and use it. So it didn't matter if you were ruining it. It would have the equivalent status of drilling a hole in a barrel of wine in order to get the wine out. So by drilling a hole, you could look at it either as you're ruining the barrel, or you can say you're making an opening. So if you want to ruin the barrel, you can hit it with an axe and you can take the wine that comes out. But if you're going to drill a hole and it's perfectly round and it's just the right size for you to put in a spigot, we call in English, then this becomes a destructive act that's really creative. And that's a little bit of dangerous territory because it could actually contribute to the positivity too. It might be a destructive act that ruins the barrel, but I made it into a tap, like when you take beer. There has to be a way to get it out, otherwise. The word tap in English, there's to tap like this, and there's to tap like a spinal tap. There used to be a band called Spinal Tap.
Spinal.
I know the band.
There was
I don't even know what it
American
means.
music in Italy. A tap is when you put something hollow into something else so that you can get liquid in or out.
Oh yeah, like you say tap.
Like tap beer.
Tap beer.
Right. So a beer tap, literally, is something you can just draw beer from a keg.
Yeah. Spillator.
Right.
Yes. Spillator.
Anyway, spigato.
Spillator.
A spillator.
Spillare.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like-
So spigot in English. Anyway, so a couple of other quick items about clothing. We mentioned, just to make clear, that the Ashkenazim are not big fans of removing solid foods or gravy or stains from an article of clothing. Just wanted to clarify last week when I said you can use your fingernail to take something off. What we don't allow you to do is to take two pieces of cloth and rub them together. This is the way they usually do laundry. And another interesting point, and these are just some miscellaneous halachot when it comes to clothing, is that it's asur to take an article of clothing that has some kind of a stain in it and to throw it into, let's say, a bucket of water, right? And it's not so much because the water removes the stains as much as we're afraid you're going to take the clothing out of the water and squeeze the water out, which is really like the zenith of the, koves, of the melaben melacha. What if I take a clean shirt and throw it into a bucket of water?
Well, it's the same thing.
Same
then.
thing.
Well, if
But
it's
the problem is
dirty, if it's dirty, I have a concern that I'm going to come to clean it, or I'm going to try to rub out the stain, or I'll try to squeeze the water out, and the water will exit the article of clothing and take the stain with it. If it's clean, what have I done? Effectively nothing, right? And bishul achar bishul. Like if I take a bread that's already been baked and I put it in my oven and I bake it again, I mean, I'm not guilty of anything.
Yeah, but you may very well need it as much as you may need.
Well, but the
it.
problem
Sure.
is that if the
If
problem
you
is
put it in the water, you may just leave it in the water.
So I'm not
until
saying you
after
should
The
do this
problem is-
lechatchila,
yeah.
but the concern is more for the sechita. It's more for the wringing of the article
Yeah.
of clothing than it is for the laundry itself. But
Yeah, so that's the same.
if it's clean, there's no reason for you to want to do this. I'm not suggesting you should. All I'm saying is that if the article of clothing is already clean, we have a little bit more of a concern for the
So
squeezing
you
out.
could be
of
more
water.
lenient on that.
You wouldn't do it on purpose, but if it happened by accident, you wouldn't have a heart attack because it would
I mean,
be
even if
major,
it happened by
concern.
accident, like there's a stain on the shirt, if it happened by accident, it's an accident anyway.
Right, and then ironically, well, that this clothing is stained is an accident, but to throw it into a bucket or throw it into a tub or into the sink that's full of water.
No, but I don't know. It's like put it somewhere near the I don't know.
I mean, you put it somewhere and it fell in, or
Yeah, something
a
like
child
that.
put it in by accident. You
Yeah.
would tell them not to. Right. So ironically, it becomes more of a problem to put an article of clothing into something that has color in it, and that's for a different reason. That's
Because
because
you-
Solvea. That's
you-
because
you
this is
paint
how
it.
you would give a white garment color by putting it into something that has color to it. So you wouldn't intentionally take a white shirt and put it into coffee or tea or juice of any kind, but
But a white food, yes.
to put
A white food. Well,
a white food article, that's something else. That's how the expression about this is "En tzivia be'ochalim." We don't hold there's such a thing as dyeing food on Shabbat. So it sounds funny, but if I were to take a pound cake, like a regular white cake, and
Put it
put
in
food
coffee?
coloring on it afterwards, or dip it into coffee, or dip it into tea, or whatever, then I wouldn't be guilty of coloring it. Some of the Ashkenazim are a little bit strict about that. We don't hold that way. Adding tea, for example, to a cup. There are those that also want to say it should be an issue, but we don't say it hold that way.
Back to the folding piece.
Mm.
I have my suit pants, and I take it off after Friday night meal, and I want to put it back on Shabbat morning. If it's not, if no kid's accident happened, which is already a miracle in
Right.
itself. So I put it on the hanger because I don't want to have 1,000 wrinkles on the next day.
Mm.
Is that's okay, right?
But he said that you can.
Because it's not the first time
If
that
it's not the first time you're wearing it,
but I still fold it on the same.
so here
Perhaps.
the Ravaja would tell you that it's nice if you don't put it exactly the way it normally is. In other words, if you want to do it that way, you can do it without being machpid. Don't be adamant. So either I can take my pants, like when you just get the pants back from the cleaners, you can fold them like paper. They're flat, and there's like a very clear crease.
Yes.
You wear them a little bit, and the crease starts to come out. So if you put it on a hanger and you put it exactly and you roll it just to make sure it matches up, and then you put that wooden thing on top so that it holds it, that's already a little bit more involved. If you put it more or less in the right place, you throw it on the hanger and you put it up, it's probably not so much of an issue.
Okay.
But if you're doing it because you want the crease to stay there, it might be more of an issue. I'm saying you want to put it that way. I don't have to purposely make a crease in the other direction, but maybe I'll put it in such a way that I'm not super adamant about how it looks. I don't want to create another crease, but at the same time, I'm not intentionally looking to keep that one.
Okay. No, what I'm afraid is not
but-
creating another one. I don't care about this one. But,
By the way, I don't remember how it came up. I had a pair of pants once that was just was washed too many times, or some well-meaning relative washed it and maybe dried it, so it shrinks because wool does that when you heat it. So I asked the dry cleaner to take out the cuffs that I had at the bottom of the pants, and he said to me, "I can take it out, but you'll always see those creases." So apparently, the first time they do this, they actually press it in such a way that it's almost permanent. So he said, once they make these the cuffs on the bottom of the pants,
Yeah.
they press it in such a way that you'll never get that out. Meaning you'll lose the definition of it, but they'll put it back next time they heat it. But you'll never get it out. You'll never straighten that out.
You will always see that you cannot remove.
Is that
You will always see it, you cannot remove.
you can't take it out? I guess they make the fabric that
Yeah, no, the fabric it stays there after a while.
it's meant to be that way. מעוות לא יוכל לתקון. That's a pasuk in Kohelet.
So wait a second, that means that 5. So if I have a suit that has a certain pleat,
Mhm.
especially in the pant, the jacket doesn't matter.
Right.
When I put back the pant, I cannot follow. I
No,
cannot.
you can't. Exactly.
Well, so first of all, if it's not the first time you're wearing it,
Yeah.
there's a few definitions to this. One is the first time you're wearing it. That's according to everyone. It's a problem.
Okay.
Brand new suit. I just took it out of the bag and now I'm wearing it the first time. Then there's the what's called beged hadash, that it still looks new. And this definition is going to depend probably on how well you take care of your clothing. If you're very careful about your clothing, it looks new for the first 2 years. Okay. According to the Shulchan Aruch, it sounds like the first time you washed it already, it's no longer considered new. At least, maybe even before. It could be that you wore it already 2-3 times, but you never actually washed it in the meantime. So, what's considered a beged chadash? This is why there's a little bit of opinions that tend towards stricture in halacha, because they'll tell you maybe as long as it looks good or it looks clean, it's not ripped, like that's considered a new article of clothing. But once it's considered new, for whatever purposes or however we define new, however we define novelty, folding it exactly the way that it was folded normally might be a problem. If it's brand new, it might be a problem midoraita or some kind of tolada of bin, because when you do laundry, you squeeze out the liquid and then you iron it. It's not a new thing. For years they were doing this. The Gemara talks about this too, keeping your clothes pressed. So it's better not to be makpid, not to be adamant about doing it exactly the same way, exactly the same shape, making it look the same thing. So what I'm saying is that if you do it generally, if you keep it more or less, in the same place, like you're putting it up on a hanger, so don't be as adamant about how it looks. You don't have to pleat it the exact opposite way, but to sit there adjusting it might be more of an issue than just to eyeball it. You put it more or less where it is. And then at least you weren't careful about it, and even if you were, you can rely on the fact that it's probably not a new suit. It wouldn't be as big a deal. If it's a new suit, the pleat is really hard, so anyway, it's going to stick there for a while. Beseder. We talked last week about synthetic fabrics. So we don't hold that you can actually do laundry on them, but we do hold that you can shake them and that you can, take off dust or whatever that you need to. You wouldn't wet them, but it's probably only midrabanan.
So, for example, the plastic bib from the baby, can I remove some of
A
the
lot
stuff?
of those have cotton behind them, by the way.
The one that I have is pure
completely,
plastic.
totally plastic.
Yes.
Yeah, and they have sometimes a cotton trim on the outside because the
It's
plastic would
even
be
a plastic
abrasive.
thing.
Even
on-
the trim is plastic.
Plastic what?
Hem, like the end of it. Sometimes they just take a piece of cloth. off.
Pure plastic. It dries in like 10 minutes.
Right. So if it's totally plastic, we wouldn't want you to do anything that's considered laundry to it, meaning washing it and then trying to get the liquid out of it.
Okay.
If it's synthetic, it's probably midrabanan, quote unquote midrabanan, with a caveat from last week that Chazal didn't talk about plastic, but
Because there were none.
there was none. But if there was, they might have considered this. So we would strongly recommend against doing anything laundry related to it, unless it's completely and totally impermeable. Okay. Last halakha for today. We do hold that it's mutar to put water on a table or on the floor and to squeegee. I don't know how to be a word in English.
Yeah.
Squeegee. Take the rubber magav, they call it in Hebrew,
Sponge.
and just sponja,
No,
right?
that's not the right word. I'm just saying that.
No, in Hebrew they call it sponja.
I know, that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying.
So they would take this rubber squeegee, is what they call this in English, and just to move it. So it's because it's considered rubber or plastic, it's not a natural fiber. What would my concern be? It's not so much the floor. The floor I don't care. Nobody launders wood. If I put a little bit of water on it to pick up some wine that somebody spilled, it shouldn't get sticky and make a nasty stain. So I can move it. My concern would be for the mop. If I use a regular cotton mop, then the concern would be that I'm trying to clean the mop when I squeeze it. It's not an article of clothing, but you're doing the same thing. Basically, you're taking something dirty with liquid in it, you're trying to squeeze it out in order to make room for more dirt. So in that kind of a situation, we would tell you don't use a cotton mop, even if it has fibers made of something less natural, more synthetic. We would still tell you don't do it at least midrabanan. But if it's rubber or plastic and it's completely impermeable, this Rav holds is perfectly mutar.
So back to my bib, it is actually completely impermeable.
Right. So that's So if it's completely in,
I'm trying to find a way to clean it up on Shabbat so I can reuse that. But,
so if it doesn't absorb anything, it's designed not to absorb anything,
yeah.
and has the same status as a nylon tablecloth, so this you can probably add water to, meaning just to wash it.
Yeah, you rinse it quickly.
Why you have pieces of fruit on it, you can wash it, but that's only because it doesn't absorb anything. It's not even considered an article of clothing, and even if you squeezed it, no liquid would come out. So
I got it. I get the
be
point.
less of an issue. There was another issue, it's a little more complicated, but about using baby wipes on Shabbat.
I thought it was only Gehama. It's kind of okay.
It's a very interesting. It has to do also with the isur, if there is such, of toweling yourself off on Shabbat. If I take a shower and I want to dry myself off, so what's the difference between my hair holding water and wool holding water?
Yes, but right now the baby's bottom is not holding any kind of water.
So it's not the baby's bottom; it's the towel
Yes.
that I'm concerned with.
But you're not doing it with the purpose that
I'm trying to absorb the water. I'm not trying, but if I'm absorbing the water from the baby's hair, then maybe we go back to the beginning.
Yes,
It's
but
a complicated
if
issue.
I clean the baby, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to squeeze the.
Right.
My kavanah is not to squeeze the
water out of the baby's hair.
water out of the wipe.
Right, but in the case of toweling off, so you take a shower, you go to the mikveh on Shabbat, so you do
shower,
want to
yes.
get the water
I agree.
out. So that's a separate issue about whether or not there is such a thing as malachot in the human body. It's a funny machloket amongst the Rishonim, but according to the Rif, there's something to be concerned for. So let's take a quick break and we'll move on to